You're listening to Street Life, a podcast about street photography with John ST and Mark Davidson.
You're listening to Street Life. I'm Mark Davidson, a street photographer from Melbourne, Australia, and with me, as he always is, Mr. Fuji fanboy himself, my mate, Mr. John ST. Guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen?
Auf Wiedersehen. Oh, that's goodbye, isn't it? It was a quick intro. See you. Bye. I don't know what the hell you said in German. What's the German for?
Willkommen und Straße lieben. Could we do the podcast in German? Look, that's actually all I know. I don't even know what I said, but...
Well, clearly not, then, if that's all you know. It's going to be a pretty boring podcast if I go, nine.
Nine?
And you just keep, nine. Yeah.
I can speak a bit of Hungarian. Does that help?
No one will notice that you're swapping languages, man. We're so ignorant English-speaking people. Yeah. So, yeah, let's try it. We'll try it for the next one. Let's see if people give us any feedback on that.
We'll do some homework. And next episode, more German. With John ST and Mark Davidson.
Und photograph with... We'll get Samuel Street Life on again.
Yeah. He'd be good. Anyway, sorry about that little detour. How you doing, mate? What's been happening?
I'm doing all right, thanks, Mark. How you been?
Yeah, pretty good. You've been in the wars, I saw on Instagram a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, let's just clear this up because I put something out there that was a bit ambiguous, really, like, you know, that I had a near-death experience, which I did. So, and people were saying, you're going to talk about it in the podcast? Because, like, what really happened? So this is what happened. I decided that I wanted to start training to do a 60-kilometer run, which I used to do.
60
so
kilometers?
I thought, right,
Jesus.
60 kilometers, yeah. I used to be a long-distance country.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing before COVID.
I couldn't run 60 meters, but anyway.
Yeah, I was training for that, and then COVID came along and it put a spanner in the works. So anyway, I thought, right, I'm getting too old now. I hadn't run for over 4 years, so I thought I better go and get checked. So anyway, I went for a heart scan, and they put the dye into me, and they said, "Are you allergic?" And I went, No, I've never had it before, so I don't know. So I went, okay. So they put the dye in, contrast dye, and then everything went fine. And they put me in a room, and they said, right, you have to sit here for 20 minutes, while because people who have a severe reaction normally happens in 20 minutes. So 20 minutes happened. No, I was fine. I paid. I left the clinic. And I thought, right, Jesus Christ, I'm starving and I need a coffee. So I was like standing there thinking, right, where am I going to go? And then I started getting this itch in my back. And I was like, I've been bitten by a mozzie. And then another one and another one. I thought, Jesus Christ, I hope a spider hasn't bitten me or something.
Jesus.
And then I looked and I had all these hives all over me, like these big welts.
Oh, God.
So I was like, do I go back to the clinic or do I go and have my breakfast in coffee first? But thankfully, I went back to the clinic. And anyway, I walked in and they took me out the back and the doctor came out and they said, look, this happens a lot. We'll give you an antihistamine. You should be fine. Yeah, it happens a lot. Apparently, so they said. I don't know if they were just trying to make me feel better or... They give me an antihistamine, but they said, look, you're going to have to stay at the clinic for an hour and a half while we keep observation on you. And I'm like, why? It's just like a rash. And they went, oh, no, it could be fatal. I'm like, how so? They went, oh, well, your throat and your tongue can swell up. And I'm like, that isn't going to happen. I'll be fine. So they put me in a room and they gave me a whistle. And they said, look, if you start feeling like things are going bad, blow on the whistle and we'll come and get you. Yeah. And I was making a joke out of it. I was like, well, what happens if I run out of air? Do I like start banging on the walls and stuff? I was just lying there on my phone. Like, well, just sit on my phone and do a few images and, do a bit of Instagram. Yeah. Anyway, 15 minutes later, my throat and my tongue started to swell up.
Jesus.
So I didn't blow on the whistle because that's embarrassing. So I just went and stood in the corridor and said to the nurse, things are going a bit pear-shaped. So the doctor rushed in and gave me a shot of adrenaline, a big shot, and some steroids. And they seemed fine with that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I wasn't too worried. I texted Lisa and said, look, I've had a bad reaction. They're on top of it. Should be fine. But if you can get down here, just pop down. And then I was lying there and they said, how you feeling? I'm like, yeah, good. It's all good. 15 minutes later, all went pear-shaped again. But this time it was a lot worse. So my throat started really closing up and I couldn't breathe.
Oh my God.
And my tongue was starting to swell up. And I was like, and I looked at the doctor, and he was starting to like get a bit panicky.
This happens all the time.
You know when you're a first aid officer and you get the training, and then 2 years go by, and then someone actually falls over the knee, and you go, oh fuck, what have I got to do? I think that's what the doctor felt like. He's like, oh, why did this dude have to come in on my shift? So, but I could hear them talking, and I was getting a bit. I was starting to get really stressed. Then I was starting to like panic. And I messaged Lisa and I said, I think I'm going to die. Because the doctor was like, what do we do? I could hear him talk to the nurses and I go, what do we do? Do we give him more adrenaline? We've already given him adrenaline. Do we give him more steroids? What do we do? So the doctor said, look, we're going to give you more steroids. This is going to really hurt. And I'm like, just put it in my fucking leg.
Yeah.
And he just whacked in. I didn't even feel it. And then Lisa rocked up and he said the doctor was panicking, like he was bobbling at her, and I was like out of it because I was just in a blind panic. And then they called an ambulance. I got sent an ambulance for 45 minutes, and they gave me more steroids through a mask, and that helped me. And then I had to go to hospital for 6 hours.
God.
For observation.
Bloody
and the
hell.
Doctor said I was really lucky I didn't die. Because it was such a severe reaction, which for someone who doesn't have any allergies to anything, it was a very, very severe reaction. So, I was lucky. So that's why I was like, die another day. And I put that story up because it just makes you think, Mark. You think you've got all the time in the world, and then something totally innocuous like that. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just a stock standard everyday procedure that everybody goes and has on occasion when you need it.
Yeah.
And it seriously nearly killed me. And the doctors told me in emergency that I'm not to have it under any circumstances, because every time you have it, the potential is for it to be worse.
I know we're laughing, but that's so scary, man. Like, that's just...
Yeah, I was shitting my pants. I was shitting my pants. And people think, like, what's it like when you get adrenaline? Are you, like, buzzing? No, literally, all I did was shake, rattle, and roll. Like, I couldn't control my body. They were pumping me with so much stuff that I was literally just shaking on the bed, and they had to hold me down because I was just literally... shaking myself. Anyway, so but I'm all right now. Yeah, so it's all good. Just can't have contrast dye.
Well, you've learnt your lesson. No running 60 kilometres, mate.
No running 60 kilometres. So luckily I didn't go for my coffee, because if I'd walked down to the cafe and was just sitting, I wouldn't have been at the clinic. I would have more than likely have died of asphyxiation.
At Diggy
Believe it or not.
On the floor.
On the floor while I was eating a croissant. Sipping my latte and having a croissant. I'll be like, and that'll be the end. And all my images, if anybody's bought any, would be worth a fortune now if I was dead. So currently they're still worth absolutely nothing, but as soon as I die, they'll be worth a lot more. So there you go.
Next time, give me a heads up. I'll buy some just before you go to the clinic.
Took it out of me though for a whole week. I was absolutely exhausted.
Seriously.
Yeah, exhausted. It was weird. The adrenaline just took it out of me. But anyway, thank you for everybody who checked in and checked on me and was concerned. But the moral of the story is, you don't know when your last day on this world will be. So make every moment count and take as many photos as you can.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Do what you love, get out there and do it. And
absolutely.
Look, John, that's a very, very vulnerable story for you to tell people, because lots of people listen to this podcast now, which is fantastic. But, in a serious note, we have had to pull back a little bit, haven't we? Since...
And that's why I decided to tell the story, because we've had to... I've been quite unwell, so I haven't been on point as much as I'd like. So unfortunately, it's Mark does all the post-production stuff of putting it all together to sound great, and I do all the background stuff of touching base with people. And we had lots of people lined up, and I just let it slip because I'd had a really bad experience. So that's why we're a little bit late, and that's why I thought I'd tell my story. There you go.
Well, onwards and upwards, John. I'm glad you're feeling better. And
I am, Mark.
And it's good, as you say, get out there and shoot. You don't know when you're going to shuffle off this mortal call. So just make the most of every opportunity and go for it.
Absolutely, totally. So on that note, I've been going out shooting a little bit more than I had been. I'm shooting everything now.
Good.
Photographing everything, it's made me think about things a little bit differently. Hopefully it'll stick. So anyway,
Yes.
That's enough of mine. That's enough of John's health. Jesus Christ.
Oh, man.
And so what's been happening in your world?
Well, I don't know if we've spoken about this on the podcast, but I just got back from Hong Kong. Well, a couple of weeks ago. So I had 10 days in Hong Kong, which was fantastic.
Oh.
Just shooting. My wife came over as well halfway through, and we did all the touristy stuff after that. But yeah, I love the city. I find it a fascinating place to shoot.
Awesome.
I went last year and I did a lot of my sort of loud, bold, flashy, brash kind of shots.
In your face stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. So I did that last time. So I sort of holstered the flash gun this time a little bit and just sort of shot some quieter sort of shots, which is great. And went out to some areas of Hong Kong, way out of the city, like right on the border of China, mainland China. And yeah, it was really good. Lots of abandoned buildings and stuff like that. So it was a great trip. I just loved it. Time off work.
It's always good.
Work exhausts me a lot of the time because you're up early and I want to shoot every day when I leave work, but it's just so tiring. It's takes it out of you. Getting up at 2 a.m. every day. So it was just good to be away from work and shoot for 10 days, and I had a ball. So hopefully I got some good stuff. I'm still, even 2 weeks later, going through a lot of my images, but. Yeah, I've got I set myself a goal. I just wanted to come back with 5 images I was happy with. I think I've done that. So, so it's good.
Wow, but you still haven't gone through everything yet, so you might come back with more than 5 yet.
Maybe. But,
and was it all digital, or was it a mixture of digital and film?
Mixture. So
cool.
I shot about 13 rolls of film and and thousands of shots on digital.
Oh,
so,
that's
good.
Good.
Good
So
fun.
when you say quieter shots, what do you mean? Explain to the general public what quieter shots mean, Mark.
Well, I mean, we've discussed
in your world, in your definition of
well,
a
in my
quiet
world,
shot.
I've been doing a lot of the flash stuff for a few years now, which I still love doing. But there are times that you want to capture a city and tell the story without you can't have, if you're working on a project, and I don't know if this is going to be a project, but just say it was. You can't have 48 images of flashing people in the face, you know what I mean? You've got to have those in-between moments, those quieter moments. So I was just focusing on smaller elements, little details, and just some more whimsical sort of quieter shots, which I enjoyed doing.
Okay. Well, I remember when you went away to Europe, I can't remember what country it was, and you went out with your film camera, and you got some beautiful countryside shots of the small village and stuff.
It was in, where was it? Bosnia, yeah.
Bosnia, okay. Absolutely stunning, mate.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? It was beautiful stuff. So hopefully you get something like that from Hong Kong as well.
That was the plan a little bit, yeah, definitely. I mean, as much, obviously Bosnian countryside is not Hong Kong, but that same approach, you know what I mean? So it was good, yeah.
And it's always nice to get away and photograph something that's outside where you live, just so you can, it just rejuvenates you a bit. That's how I always felt anyway. So, and Hong Kong is very, very different to Melbourne.
Yes, it is.
It is. It's very different in most places in the world.
Yeah.
So, it just helps you see things differently, and it just rejuvenates you when you go out and photograph. So I'm really glad that you got at least 5 shots, Mark, and hopefully you've got a few more.
Yeah.
It's great.
Exactly. So
have you developed all your film?
Yeah, I have. Well, I did it over there, developed it in Hong Kong.
Is that why you've got a little can out there that says, please donate to the Mark Go fund me film page?
That's why I had to get a ship back. So.
Oh, no. Did you? No. That's nice. Are you one of those cruises, a Caribbean cruise thing, all you can eat?
No, just like a freighter back. But
well, I'm glad you got them all developed as well. Did you get any film when you're in Hong Kong? Isn't it cheaper over there when
it
you
is?
can buy it?
Well, it was cheaper to develop. I think it was like $5 a roll to develop. So it was.
Oh, did you get it developed over there?
Yeah.
Oh, smart move.
Yeah. So.
Oh, there you go, kids. If you can't afford to get it developed in Australia, you've got like 25
Go to Hong
rolls.
Kong.
Book a trip to Hong Kong.
It's probably going to work out cheaper. So
it probably will. It'll probably work out a bit cheaper, even if it's just a stopover for a night and then fly over to Malaysia where it's a bit cheaper. Was the accommodation that expensive in Hong Kong, Mark?
Oh,
I heard it's pretty pricey.
So pricey, man. So pricey. I don't know. Have you ever been to Hong Kong?
Oh, no, I haven't stopped there. It was on my list. I wanted to go there before the British handed it over, returned it back to the Chinese, but I never got around to it. Yeah. So, unfortunately, but it is on my list.
Yeah.
And I have an extensive list. And after my near-death experience, my list is definitely starting to get ticked off a lot more.
Do it. Well,
So it's not going to be a list. It's actually going to be actions now. So yes, Hong Kong is on there
Well,
because it's supposed to be awesome.
yeah, it's a great place to shoot. I really enjoy it. So yeah, it's good. And
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you show up when you decide to show your stuff now, Mark. You're pretty quiet these days. It must be only a select few of your OnlyFans page that gets to see your photos.
well, I put a couple little ones. Yeah, not a lot, but I put a few on Threads and one on Instagram, or one or two on Instagram, which was there you go. But
I don't look at Threads.
oh,
That's just another place to look.
yeah, I know.
I'm not looking. I'm not doing it. I'm not. Nah.
Yeah.
I get people that send me stuff from Threads, and I go, I'm not going on there. It'll be just another rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know.
You know, nah, not doing it.
It's well.
Anyway, what else?
While I was away, what were you up to? I think you went to a talk, didn't you? Which I heard about, which is amazing.
I did. I went to Trent Park, did a talk at the art gallery. Yeah,
The art gallery.
wonderful. It
Which
was
art
only
gallery?
for an hour. So thanks to Ben, BGS Funk, for reminding me because I'd forgotten to get me tickets, and it sold out. And then they had to organise a bigger venue within the same place, but a bigger lecture theatre.
Bigger room, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful talk. Because Trent's not only an amazing photographer, he's also a great storyteller and narrator.
He's a raconteur, the boy, yes.
Woo! Listen, you get big words. Mr. Radio Man. Yeah, so he's wonderful. So when he shows up an image, he tells you the whole story behind it. He remembers everything.
Yeah.
You know, and just wonderful. Unfortunately, it only went for an hour. And you literally could have listened to it for an hour and a half, 2 hours easy. And yeah, wonderful. Had some great wisdom to share and talked about how he takes his images and everything, you know?
Yeah, nice.
Wonderful.
And
Highly recommend it if you get to see Trent. And
the
Narelle's
reason?
coming to do an exhibition too soon.
Yeah, I saw that. I know she's got
2nd of May.
Yeah, exhibition coming up. But what was the reason behind Trent's talk? He just had nothing else to do, so he decided
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think he was he did an interview on ABC with Robbie Buck.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was very well received. I think he just wanted to do something. I don't know how it all came about.
Okay.
It just all of a sudden he was doing there's a talkers in residence or something, I don't know, or artists talking or something at the art gallery. And they probably just tapped him after that and asked him to come and do a talk. And the place was packed. So many people. And it's always good when someone like Trent comes out because, you know, the whole community always comes out to support things like that. And you always see people that you don't always bump into. So it was great.
That's awesome. No, I wish I
it was great.
Yeah. And yes, as you mentioned, Narelle's exhibition, Narelle Audio, her exhibition coming up on the 2nd of May, which would be great. So I'm heading up to Sydney in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to check it out. So it's going to be good.
I'm going to the opening. I've RSVP'd my interest, so I'll be there. Oh God, I'm almost like a stalker now. They'll go, oh no, he's here again. There he is. I'll be like waving in the background. Yoo-hoo!
And is this sort of in conjunction with a release of her book, or is this something separate?
I think it is. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Look, Narelle's work's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't really know Narelle's work that well.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, you know, because I didn't even know Trent until 3 years ago. And then someone said, do you look at Trent Park? And I was like, who's he? Such a noob. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this guy is amazing. But then Narelle had an exhibition at the Leica Gallery.
Yeah.
And she
saw
showed her
that.
work there down the bit. Oh, man.
Yeah, the shots in Perth and stuff like that. Amazing.
Oh, stunning stuff. And you know what? It's so nice because it's all shot on film, yeah? And we go to all these extremes to take all the grain and make everything look pretty in our digital images.
No,
and yet...
we like the imperfections.
Narelle's images were all on film, grain, yeah?
Yeah, I love grain.
And it looks so nice up in print. It was just stunning. It just gave it so much more depth. And I think it's different, the grain in film compared to digital grain.
Yeah.
Noise. They call it grain to make it sound better. They're just trying to cover up the inadequacies of
The sensor.
a digital sensor. They call it grain when really it's like shitty noise.
Exactly.
But yeah, fabulous. So if anyone's in Sydney or is planning to visit during the 2nd of May until June something, it's here almost for a whole month. And I think it's totally free. Highly recommend it to go and see it because you won't be disappointed. It'll be, Narelle is like next level.
Wow.
Awesome photographer. And did you get out? We just had Anzac Day, which is something that's become quite a thing on my calendar now. I've been going, even when I wasn't living here, I would always travel here for Anzac Day to Sydney, and I've been photographing it for 4 years now, and I'm there all of the time.
Yeah.
So did you get out, Mark?
Well, last year I had an amazing day at Anzac Day. Got some great shots that I was happy with. This year, I was a little lame ass and I went back to sleep, so I didn't go.
You have a little nanny nap after work.
I was a little bit tired.
Well, you know, I'm too tired to go out and photograph people. Well, unfortunately, you had to work.
I did.
Right?
I had to work,
so
I got to 8:30. My show finishes at 8:30, and it was. I thought, geez, I'm knackered. And I just went home and slept. So I'm, really disappointed. I think the whole of Melbourne street photography community was out and about shooting, and I got massive FOMO, which was totally my fault. So yeah, I didn't go out. So what about you? Did you get some shots?
Yeah, I went out. It's interesting because I'm starting to, because I go to a similar place and the same times, because I know where the light and that is. I'm starting to see the same people over and over again, and I'm almost building a bit of a rapport with some of them now because thankfully they're starting to remember me. Mm-hmm. And when I first started shooting, there was these 3 old dudes that were always together. It's obviously they were in their squadron or they were in their group or whatever, and they always meet.
Bomber Command.
Yeah, bomber. Whatever. Wow, I can't remember. I think they might have been in, I can't remember where they were. They were from. They'd all gone to Vietnam together. Oh. And it was three older fellas, older gentlemen. So I took their photo, and because I don't normally take portraits, but sometimes if they ask or if I'm right in their chops, I will take a portrait of them, I said, do you want to? So anyway, last year, there was only 2 of them there.
Oh no.
Not this year, but last year, and I was like, sometimes they can't remember you. Do you know what I mean? They do now because when I have a conversation with them, and I was like, there's always 3 of you. Like, because you never know, because people, they're getting older now, things happen to people. And I said something unfortunate, and they went, oh no, so-and-so, he's just unwelded. Oh, God. Oh, I said, because I've got photographs here, I would hate for Anyway, so I saw those guys there again and had a bit of a chat. And...
He had the imaging guy, and he's he had a reaction.
What I'll do is I'll just blow it up and we'll get the cardboard cut out of him and he can stand next to you just to be there and, So, yeah, it's nice. And I love Anzac Day. I know some people think it's nationalistic and all this other bollocks, but I love to remember those that have fallen to give us our freedoms that we have today. And that goes across all services, all wars, blah, 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 blah. And I love it. And I love getting amongst it and talking to people. It's great because you see the generations coming up with, maybe the son or the grandkids are wearing the medals now. And it's a tradition that's being brought through. And I think it's vitally important as people pass away and are no longer with us, that we don't forget these things because it is important. We have all these freedoms because of these people, the sacrifices they made, the good, the bad, and the ugly, whether it's their fault or not, I don't give a shit. Things happen, and I love to be there, and I love to photograph it. And I'm just going through my images now. But I just want this year, because I've not been well, I didn't want to have a big. Normally we have a big get together, and there's a whole group of us, and then this year I just went out with a couple of friends, and but it didn't matter because everyone was there anyway. I bumped into Sam. Sam Ferris was the very first person I bumped into. Mm-hmm. He gave me a call out from the middle of nowhere, John.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice. And then you just bump into everybody's out. Everybody's out. Like in Melbourne, if you'd been out and you hadn't gone for your nana nap.
Yeah, Ben, Human, Sam, Mike, everyone out and about. Yeah,
Dan the cameraman, all of them.
Beautiful.
And it's nice. It's nice to see them out and about. We all do. We didn't catch up or anything. We just had a bit of a chat where we were, and we just photographed what we wanted to photograph. It's good.
A good day.
Had a good day. Beautiful day. Awesome weather.
Yeah.
Anyway,
John, we've been crapping on a long time.
we have.
People have clicked on this podcast for a very specific question that we've no doubt flagged in the title. So why don't we just get on with it?
Fire away.
Now, John, one of my favourite photographers who's doing amazing, innovative work, posted a really interesting question on social media earlier this week. We've had him on the podcast before, but I thought we'd invite him back to discuss his comments because I think it could make for a very interesting conversation. This is what he wrote, and I'm not going to do the Canadian accent, so maybe there are just too many photos now. How do we discern between what is meaningful and a sea of noise? And I think it's a very good question. So, Knox Bertie, welcome back to Street Life.
Good to be back. How are you guys?
Very good, very good.
Good,
So,
thanks, mate.
look, Knox, firstly, too many photos. What did you mean by that when you wrote that?
You know, it's when you asked me to come on here, I had to think about that, and like too many. It's I don't know. I think it's you'd have to ask the question: what is too many? What is too little? And I don't know if there's an answer to that. It's probably more that we're just bombarded with photos like at no other time, and that number is massively increasing. Like I'm sure year on year, just the total number of photos is going up and up and up and up. And the question is probably more about what is the impact of that? What's the impact on us? What's the impact on photography? What's the impact on your own creativity? All of that sort of stuff.
Look, I think I tend to agree, Knox. I mean, back in the day, it's probably the fault of social media, really. In the past, we got to view work through books and publications. And I guess if we are feeling a little jaded about photography, it's probably incumbent on us to maybe give ourselves a social media break, because you're right. You're just swamped by images every single day if you're on all these platforms. So I guess what are the sort of remedies of, I guess, drowning in that sea of noise?
Well, look, I think you hit on it a bit. I think back to, days before. I'm old enough. I'm an old guy now. So it's, I think of the days before Instagram and even the days before Flickr, if you go all the way back to that of era. But, the only place you could actually really see photos was in books, and it was the books you could afford. And so you only had a few of them. So you just tended to just look at these same photos over and over and over and over again and really, really study them. And they were coming at you at a different pace. I don't think you can ever truly get away with the noise of photography, but I think there's an important place for going back to that and spending more time on some really, really good work. I think there's an element of, whatever you take in has an impact on whatever you put out. And so there's probably a certain element of, if you put garbage into the system, you're probably producing garbage out as well. And just making sure that what you're looking at consistently is.
I think the other issue that I've come across, Knox, is not just the absolute abundance of images that, look, street photography has become very popular of late, more so than previously. Myself and Mark have joined the bandwagon. We're fairly new. But if we're going to follow the social media issue, which most of us now are all sort of picked up on and we're using, you're old school and you said you use books. I've bought books too. It's not just the abundance of images, it's how the algorithm pushes particular things to you. So, and I'm feeling that the quality, some of it's there, but there's a whole lot of awful stuff in between. And I don't know if that's because the images are getting worse, or it's just the algorithm pushing a particular narrative or a particular style of image that it's deemed that it wants you to see. And I feel like I'm not seeing anything new anymore. When I first joined Instagram, I felt like I had all this variation of images over and over and over again. And that really helped me when I first started. But now it seems to have narrowed to quite a specific thing where I only get to see same things over and over and over again, similar style. How, other than going to photo books, what do you do?
I don't know. It's a really interesting point you raise, though, and I think the advent of algorithms and the change in Instagram and the change in how we view photos, it's got to have an impact, right? Because all of a sudden there's this echo chamber effect happening. And whatever you like, and you probably tend to like things that look very similar to the things that you're posting or the things that you're thinking about, but then the system is starting to feed back those same things to you. And so it just goes further and further and further. And it's just like a classic in science positive feedback loop, where you start that process and you just go further and further and further and further down the road. And before long, you're just looking at the same thing over and over and over again.
Yep.
And you really have to hunt for something that's different. It's not brought to you. And so unless you're out there actually seeking something different, you're probably not going to find it, which I think goes back to what Mark was saying. It's probably important to get off the thing and go out and seek things for yourself, because it's probably not going to come to you in our current method of viewing photos.
And it's also interesting that, whether rightly or wrongly, some people, many people listening to this may get validation through social media and the amount of likes they get on an image and whatnot. And this feedback loop can maybe have a detrimental impact on the creativity or the work that you're putting out. Because if you put out something doesn't look like what you're seeing on social media, it may not get the likes and it may not get the shares and everything like that. So you may think it's not a good image. So is social media a good gauge of what's a good photograph?
Look, it's, I think it's such a good question. And anytime I put a question like that out there, I get the same response. You can expect to hear it from numerous people saying, oh, I do my own thing and I do this and I just post what I like in that. And I kind of, excuse my French, I kind of call bullshit on it, because whether you realize it's having an impact or not, it has to have an impact. And it's going to impact your process, because you're going to look at things that you're getting feedback on, and whether you realize you're doing it or not, it's going to direct how you shoot or how you process or anything. I definitely don't think it's a good way of gauging a photo. I think it's, a good way of gauging the likeness of photos. And so if you're shooting in a way that's probably similar to either what you've got likes from before or what has worked in the past, or similar to everybody else's work, then it probably works. But if you go off in any other direction, my guess is, you're probably going to get pretty negative feedback, but that might be a good thing. Yeah. And maybe that should be the gauge of whether you're headed in the right direction or not. I don't know.
Well, I've been trying new stuff as well, Knox, and you've had some influence on that. And we had a discussion about that in the coffee shop, because, the reflection stuff, and we were saying how here we go. This is the interesting thing, yeah? I was saying, wow, isn't it great that you've come up with this wonderful idea? And then you say, well, yes, well, I thought so, until I came across a book from the 1920s or something, and some dude was doing something very similar that you were totally unaware of at the time. Now, I've been experimenting and trying stuff like that because I've been getting a little bit bored with doing my other stuff, which we all do from time to time. And it hasn't had anywhere near as much attention on Instagram as my previous other stuff. Now, I don't think that's because people don't like it or they don't think it's good. I think it's because it's different to what I've done before, and the algorithm is not pushing it to people, because I can see that the engagement isn't there. But if you don't look into that and you sort of dig down a little bit into the nitty-gritty of Instagram, it gives you that little thing where you can find out, you would automatically assume that people don't like it. And as much as you want to change, like Mark mentioned before, we all want this feedback and to feel great about what we're doing and that we're moving forward and, we're growing as a photographer. But when you only get 55 likes on an image and then it's stupid when you say that. Likes are not important on an image, but that's what we use for feedback. Whereas before, you used to get people telling you in person, I really like that image, blah, 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 blah. Now we're relying on it in social media to get that feedback. And when you don't get it, makes you feel a bit of shit, to be honest. But that doesn't represent that, because some of my favorite images that I've taken are my least liked, and yet some of the most basic, boring images, they've got tons of, it doesn't mean anything. But when you if you're trying something new and you're getting out of your comfort zone and you're looking and you're not sure yourself whether you're actually going in the right direction or whether what you do is good, you sort of want to go out there and get something back from your followers, so to speak, your, I was going to say OnlyFans, but that sounded
That's
so
something very
bad.
different, John. Yeah.
And when it doesn't come, you sort of go, oh, shiver me timbers.
Yeah, and probably the natural instinct then, sorry, is to fall back on just what you always do, which is again that positive feedback loop thing. And so you then just go out and shoot the same thing over and over and over and over again. And before you know it, you just got a whole bunch of the same photos, and you're not trying anything new, and you're not growing, and it's not working. It's interesting. Like you bring up a few points, like that is, using likes or using any social media platform to gauge the quality of your work is going to be fraught with problems because of what you've just described, where I just think being in person with people that you trust and people who are good photographers or good artists themselves to get some genuine feedback is probably going to have the biggest impact. And again, I think back to, when I was first starting out, and I'm going back sort of 25, 30 years ago now, probably the best feedback I got was in community darkrooms where people often didn't hold back and could be quite brutal, but, be bringing something out into light and looking at it, and somebody would look over the shoulder and go, that shit. Like, but it usually was. And you're kind of going in that wrong direction. And there's certain people you just didn't listen to, but there were some people that you really did listen to, and you could kind of trust it and look at it and give you some really honest feedback. It allowed you, I think, to be a little bit more creative. You brought up, I was looking at that book and that sort of reflections thing. I thought I was onto something new, and I found this person in the photo league doing it this is 1930s New York, and it looks exactly the same, like literally the same. The faces are different, the scenes are a little bit different because they're in a different era, but the exact camera effect is being done. But probably the difference, I think back then, maybe like that, that there was a group of people working together and pushing each other to be creative and try new techniques and think outside the box, but they were doing it together as a group. And there was some phenomenal photographers working together back then.
Well, look, Knox, that's super interesting because I didn't know this story, this anecdote. And so when you did see that book and those images from, all those years ago, did it make you go, oh, shit, I don't want to shoot the way I'm shooting now? Or did you say, well, I'm doing it my way. Yes, they did it, 60, 80, 100 years ago, whatever, but I don't care. I'm just going to continue down this path and see what I can do. Or did it give you pause for thought and go, crap, it's been done. Maybe I should stop all this?
I think everything's been done.
Yes.
If you look at any great photographer who you think is doing something new, it's probably a collection of the things that they loved, and they're probably piecing those things together. They're probably just stealing from a whole group of people, and so it's not as noticeable, and they're probably hiding it maybe better than some other people be hiding it, or they've worked on it and put their own sort of degree of something different on it. But look, there was actually some comfort in it. I looked at that book and I thought, this is about 100 years ago, and people were pushing themselves back then to do this, and you kind of feel like you're a bit of a chain of people doing these things. But the other thing that I thought was quite cool is, and maybe even sad, is the fact that, they were probably being more creative back then. Yeah. It was newer. They were probably taking bigger risks, and they weren't just kind of going out and trying to shoot that same thing that everybody is shooting.
Yeah, it's, absolutely. And also, just in the second part of the question that you floated on social media, you said that how do we discern between what is meaningful and a sea of noise? And I just want to pick up on that quickly. And so, what is meaningful? Like when you see an image, what's your measure of a meaningful photo?
I don't know. I think there's some of it that just sort of happens where you instantly know, and probably even in your own work. Like if I look at your stuff, Mark, I'm sure there's things that you look at and you just instantly know that's good. You did a workshop with me, and I can remember, one of the photos that you took in that workshop. As soon as I saw it and you saw it as well, I think we both went, that's good. And I probably couldn't explain why. And I'm not sure you could either, but there was just something about it that it stood out, and it was a great shot. I often ask myself this question. If you look at what we consider to be some of the most meaningful photos in history, why and would they still be meaningful today? And so, like, if that photographer who was born 50, 60 years ago, or 70 or 80 years ago, started shooting right now and they were a 19, 20-year-old and they took that same photo, would it still jump off the page and have the same impact? And I think some of them, yeah, definitely. I think there's some photos that just have an immediate emotional connection. But there's probably others that wouldn't, that were probably amazing in a time and an era, but probably wouldn't stand up now and would just get lost in that sea of noise. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but I kind of think, like, what is it about those unique photos that make them so meaningful? And I think there's an emotional connection to them.
Definitely.
Do you think it's because they were more selective about what they shared or you got to see? So you got to see those photos. That the one thing I've learned in looking at photo books is that some of the great photographers that I look at and I admire and I put up on a pedestal and go, I wish I was. I look and sometimes they've been photographing for 30, 40 years. And you look through the photo books and they may have, if they're lucky, 40, 60 quality images that get used over and over again, and the rest of the stuff it comes down to what you're saying. Less is more, so to speak. And so we look at those images because there was the creme de la creme of photos that those people produced. They didn't just go out and chuck something that they're, a silhouette of a guy walking past the front door or something. You know what I mean? Just willy-nilly. They had to be very selective about what they were going to show, what they were going to exhibit, because that was what they stood behind. Do you think that might have something to do with it, Knox? Whereas now we're just posting because we're told that we have to post. We've got to keep our engagement up. We've got to find something to keep it up, keep the fans happy, feed that troll.
What you're touching on. It's something I often start workshops with and have a discussion around this point, because we are living in this age where people are posting constantly, a couple times a day. And I would argue that, a good year for me, I'd have 3 or 4 photos that I really like. And I feel like I've really hit it. And that's in a good year. Like, I think last year, I can't even think of one that I really like. And, I don't know why, but they come or they don't come. And when you think of photographers in history, they didn't have that hanging over their heads that they've got to be posting all the time. And so they were working on really good quality work. But I ask the question in this way, and I do this thing where I say, think of your favorite photographers in history, and then grab a piece of paper and just write down your 10 favorite photos from that person. And most people can get to about 4 or 5, and that's it.
Yep.
And no matter how hard you try, you can't think of the 6th or 7th one. And I'd argue even some of the greats that we all talk about. You take somebody like Henry Cartier-Bresson. Most people can't think of 5 or 6 photos unless you're really studying them. You take Robert Frank's Americans, probably the most famous photo book of all times, the most influential photo book on street photography and probably documentary photography. But I'd argue to anyone, like, write down 5 photos or 6 photos from that book that you can remember. And most people can remember the cover, and a couple of shots probably, but after that, it gets pretty fuzzy. And so, I think that impact of posting all the time is really huge, because we're not looking at that really specific quality of a couple great shots. Yeah. And probably some of those just get lost in the shuffle.
It's so interesting you say that. I just listened to a podcast with Baldwin Lee, the American photographer, and so he studied under Walker Evans, and he said that if you look at Walker Evans' body of work, it was all done, his best work, the only stuff that you've ever seen of his was done in 2 years. Out of that, like, he photographed for 50, 60 years, but his only work that's ever shown is in a 2-year period. And I just found that fascinating because, he's a legend of photography, Walker Evans, and everything that you know of him is distilled into a couple of years. And so maybe you're right. Even now, so I stopped posting on Instagram for a while, and people would come up to me and say, "Mark, you're not shooting anymore." I'm like, "No, I am. I'm just not really sharing my work. I'm just sort of going out and working on stuff and not posting on Instagram." But you're right. Like now, we're expected to share our work all the time when it's probably not necessary to do so.
Yeah, and it's if you think about that with the Walker Evans scenario. Like if I think of Walker Evans, I can think of sort of 3 or 4 of his shots. There's the lady with the blind crosshair chest, and there's the shots that he obviously did on the subways with like outstanding, phenomenal stuff that was so groundbreaking at that time. But you get past that, and again, I can't think of a lot.
Yeah,
but he didn't have to post all the time, and I reckon if you do, one of the problems with it is you're bound to just be posting mediocre work.
Yeah.
There's no possible way, if you use that as an example, Walker Evans couldn't do it. There's no way that Walker Evans could have produced this like groundbreaking photo every single day on his way to work and then post it. And everybody went, wow, that's amazing, historic photo. Yeah. And so for us to think that we can do it is if you put it in that perspective, it's crazy.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, right. Absolutely. So, all right, let's think of some solutions then, Knox. So is it a good idea? And please tell me if you think this is a shit idea. So
here we go. He's going to pitch now, Knox. He's going to pitch.
No, I'm just thinking that if you really love photography and you want to keep doing it, and as we've just been discussing, you're not going to be posting amazing work all the time. Is it a good idea to maybe pick some of your images that you really like and go away and start working on a project and working on, not single images, going out and taking images that are going to complement these images that you are happy with. And maybe they're not amazing images, but they're going to tell a story, or they're going to work in a body of work, and maybe approach photography that way rather than just going out, right, I've got to get single images and post them all the time. Maybe sort of think a bit more holistically and in a larger body of work rather than single images. Would that be helpful to people listening?
I don't know. I'm probably not the best guy to ask for that, because this is a question I'm asking myself all the time, and something that I'm constantly struggling with. Sort of like thinking about bodies of work and putting things together and how do these things relate. And then I get stuck in sidelines with a single image. And so, it's a struggle for me. I think if you ask me personally, I would say yes, because it's kind of how I feel. Like I should be pushing that away and really focusing on a single project and putting a unified body of work together. And I know we've had that conversation in person before. But I do think if you were to just remove yourself from the noise and take time to actually focus on your own work without any sort of feedback from anybody outside of maybe just a small circle of people that you trust, what you'd probably end up with is something very different, but probably better, and probably something that maybe would stand the test of time a bit better than just those single images that are being posted over and over.
I like where Mark's going, and this is we were fortunate enough, Knox, to be able to see a wonderful speaker last week in Trent Park.
Yeah, jealous.
And unfortunately, he only spoke for an hour, but it was a wonderful hour. But what I got out of that was when Trent was talking about his career, where he started. If you listen to what Trent was saying, nearly everything that he's done has always been a 2, a 3, or a 4-year project where he's collected he might have a particular narrative in his head of what he wants, but he is working towards a goal for a body of work to come together. It's never just a single image. And from what I took from the talk anyway, so please correct me, Knox, if I've misunderstood. But that was something that was really, because I'm a single image sort of guy. I don't go out with any sort of idea of what I'm going to photograph. I just photograph anything and everything that catches my eye. I'm fortunate enough to be able to see different types of things and not just be focused on one thing. I can go slow shutter. I can go reflections. Whether I do them well, that's another question. But I'm lucky enough to do that. Whereas I think, but that's also, sometimes I just feel like I'm floating in the wind. Like I don't have a direction. I don't have a purpose as such, other than getting my camera and going out. So I think what Mark's touching on is, and yourself, You've just mentioned it as well, but I find it very difficult, very challenging to bring that all together. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. Everyone says get a project. What, Knox, wisdom,
Help him.
help me, Knox.
I don't think. Can you help me? I don't know.
I feel this is a psychiatrist thing. Hello, Lifeline.
We need to go have a coffee and just, that talk was awesome. I wish it was longer than an hour. I kind of sat there by myself listening, and we went out and we had dinner afterwards, and we all sort of talked about it. And I said I don't know if I walked out motivated or if I walked out thinking I should probably just put my camera away. Like, this guy is and there was so many things I took from what he said that I thought was just really, really impressive. But where you're right, like he talked about working on these projects over a period of time. But I also took away that when he was saying that he's shooting constantly, not shooting and posting and looking for feedback and doing that, like just shooting and shooting and collecting and shooting and collecting and collecting. And, we probably see the best of the outcome of that. And he touched on it where, he shoots a roll of film and then looks at that roll of film and gets a feedback and goes out and shoot. And I think he said in his exact words was that, sometimes you hit it dead on, but most of the time you don't. And my guess is in that quantity of work that he's shooting, most of it is rubbish. But every once in a while, it gets off onto some sort of pathway that works for him. But there's a lot of restraint in the way that he's working as well, and the way that he talked about how he's working, and I've got a lot of respect for that. And I think maybe that restraint is the answer, because I could imagine we all think that the grand idea is going to come and then we go and shoot it, but maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's the quantity of shooting that the grand idea comes from. And once you start looking through all of this work, the idea comes out of it.
And Knox, I just want to touch on one other thing. You said, like, it's important, maybe instead of looking to get feedback from the hive mind of Instagram, you find a couple of well-chosen people that you trust. But at the same time, how do you choose those people? Because you don't want people who are just going to say nice things because they're worried that they're going to hurt your feelings. Otherwise, you end up in the same boat as Instagram. And when I first started, people saying, get some feedback about your images other than Instagram from some friends that you trust. So I did. And every image I would send them, they would go, that's awesome, John. Well done. I wish I could take an image. That's not what I wanted. You need to find people who are going to be
Constructive.
Constructive criticism that you're not going to be offended by and take personally. And that can be quite hard for some people.
Yeah, I think we've lost that. Maybe we should all share on Twitter, where people seem to love to do that.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe we're just using the wrong platform. I don't know. But if you look back through history, there's sort of like artists kind of congregated together, and there's these sort of generations of things that happen. Like in my mind, I think of sort of like, the lost generation in the 1920s in Paris, and the American writers that were there. And you've got guys like, you've got, Faulkner and Hemingway and Steinbeck and Fitzgerald. And in my mind, I picture these guys sitting in a pub, and I can't imagine Hemingway was so nice. I can imagine he was ripping Fitzgerald's work apart and saying it's too soft, or it's too this, or it's too that. And they probably grew as artists as a result of having those very trusted relationships with people that they respected. And I listened to a podcast last night, and it was an interview with Joan Baez. I was thinking about that sort of generation of, the beatniks, and then all of a sudden you've got this whole folk scene happening. And I can imagine they were playing folk music together, but they're probably ripping into each other as well and saying, this is good, that's not good. And, we don't like that electric guitar. That's the obvious story. But there's all of that kind of happening. and then different generations, like you go into sort of like, that whole era of like Patti Smith and Maplethorpe and the Chelsea Hotel, and they were probably getting really good critical feedback from those people that were around and from a whole bunch of different sources. I think people are afraid of that nowadays, but I think it's what we need, and there isn't a great source of that. People will go sign up for workshops, and I think part of the reason people sign up for workshops is that, but I don't think it needs to be a kind of paid thing. I think if you just had a trusted group of friends that was like, let's just be honest here. I think that would be more powerful than anything. Here in Australia, I think there probably is a group of street photographers who could come together and do that and would probably benefit from that if somebody just put it together.
Well, let's do it. John, I'm going to send you all my photos now, and if you tell me they're shit, then that's fine. That's all good. I won't do anything with them. I'll bin them.
D-, must try harder. Has potential if he applies himself. That was basically what my whole report card always said. Has potential but doesn't apply himself. Now, Knox, I just wanted to go on, okay, we're not going to post any more images, yeah?
Yes, we are. Well,
Hold on. We're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to feed that feedback loop and that echo chamber, yeah? Now, last
John,
year?
something tells me you're going to be the guy that's going to struggle with that the most.
I had a habit of posting 2 images every day, Knox. Every day. And I am starting to now, nowhere near like Mark, I'm dropping off. You won't see it every day anymore. I'll post an image. Sometimes I'll post 2. But I haven't posted for the last few days now at all.
Ooh.
Almost a week,
You're
which
right.
is like, I don't even do that. I don't even do that when I'm on holiday. Anyway.
Is that why your hand's shaking?
Yeah.
No, that's the lack of coffee now because I'm had to cut down my caffeine. Now, Knox, last year, if we're not posting images, the only way we can get feedback is you went to, and I was invited, but unfortunately I was interstate, to print photographs and share them amongst people and get feedback. Do you think this is something that we should be looking at again? Because we only ever look at our photos now on a bloody backlit screen that's the size of a postage stamp, unless you've got like the fold out and you come out this big. Do you think that's something that we should, as photographers, look at doing again? Printing off our work, maybe our top 10 images that we thought for the month, catching up with friends and having a coffee or a beer and sharing our photos and getting feedback from people. How did you find that when you did it?
Yeah, look, I think you're probably right. I'm a bit old school, so I'm a firm believer in printing everything. Like I'm sitting here in my dark room, and so pretty much any photo that I think is worth anything, I'll make a print of it first. But that's just the way that I work. That's sort of my own process, and I know everybody works differently. I think that whole print swap thing. It's really social. What I didn't see was an element of like honesty and truth and people really wanting to share ideas and critique each other's work. There's probably too many people and it's maybe the wrong environment for that. I think it's a great idea to print stuff and share stuff. I think to get really good feedback, it's almost like you need a working group of photographers that, really want to achieve something and work together and probably just pick a time to meet and actually go through work and present work to each other and provide real feedback. I think that probably would be more productive than a print swap.
Okay.
Well,
and how would you share that feedback, Knox? Would you have to print your images off in your small little group, or would you just show them on your phone?
Well, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe we just pass a phone around.
pass the iPad.
Yeah. Or
Actually, you know what would be good?
In silence and look at each other's Instagram accounts.
Just put a load of images up of your Fiverr, and you put your Fiverr, and you don't tell who took them, and then decide what's good and what's bad, because some people will. Yeah, that's an idea. There you go. We'll mix and match.
Well, look, it would be fascinating. It'd be interesting to just start it with a few people, and I think there'd be interest in it. If you started it small, I reckon a lot of people would want to join that. But it probably would work. I don't know if you guys remember, like these types of things did happen a little bit online years and years ago. So I mentioned Flickr earlier on. Flickr had a way of doing that could be actually quite brutal. And, it was probably a bit too open, but it people would put up their work, and it was actual critiques. And when you read through the critique threads in certain groups, some of it was genuinely quite good, and some people were taking some time to write some really serious stuff about the way that people were photographing, and it was interesting because some of it was rubbish, but that's anything online, but you could actually pull out some really good information from that.
So it was more in depth than great shot, thumbs up emoji on Instagram. So
yeah, right. Little heart.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my favourite one, Mark. And the old clapping hands.
Yeah.
The old clapping hands. Love that one. What are you talking about? I don't have time, Mark, to write big things like Oscar, where he critiques your whole photo for you. Thanks, Oscar, for doing that.
Same thing to you. Like, what do you guys think? What do you, you're both photographers. What do you think would be the best form to get that kind of critical feedback?
Look, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you probably want to get it into a group of people that you really, you admire their work and they like your work. Well, I guess not even, but some people that you trust, as John touched on before, you probably don't just want to go to a pub with 20 other photographers and pass around photos. And, I guess that's probably not the environment to make it actually meaningful or see results. But you're right. I think if you get a small group of 3 or 4 or 5 photographers, you meet up regularly, you share your latest work and get some honest feedback, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you do with people in today's society that don't have time, Knox, to meet up? Because everyone's so busy with their social lives.
Well, I think you just have to commit to it. I think
I agree.
I reckon if you chose the right people, there's people that are, everybody's got varying levels of investment in photography. There's people who live and breathe it, and think about it from the moment they wake up and every moment of the day. I'd probably put myself into that category. It's on my mind 24/7.
Yeah.
And I reckon the two of you are probably in that category as well.
Yeah.
And so if you grab people like that and you say, like, we're gonna make this time and commit to it because we're committing to helping each other progress in our work, I think that works. If it's just a social thing and people don't see value in it, I don't think people would commit to it. Or if somebody didn't really value photography, I don't think it would work either.
Spot on. Well, Knox, look, I find this all fascinating. Thank you so much for jumping on the line with us. We've taken up so much of your time. We really appreciate it. But I just found your comments fascinating. And it's good to sort of air these things because a lot of people are probably going through this at the moment. And I don't know if there's any advice you want to leave the listeners with?
I feel like I've probably talked already too much. So I'll just say best of luck to everyone, I suppose.
Good luck.
Keep shooting.
Post away.
Oh, goodness. Thanks for joining us, Knox. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem at all.